Oh, looks like we are live. John Spence, you like this song?
Very much.
Kind of tease us up for our conversation a little bit today too, especially with the theme of future of work. What's the future going to look like? I think that's a big question for a lot of people too. So as people roll in, I'll pause that so you can kind of hear us. I want to give you just a little bit of an intro. It's been about what, John, 160, 170 days since you were here the last time?
Something like that. Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. And a lot has changed in a very short period of time, for sure. So today's a little bit of an update on that, right? So
yeah,
where we've been and where we are now, and we're going to look into the future and specifically around the future of work. John is a friend of mine. I was just telling John this book, Awesomely Simple, and we'll put this in the link too, and also in the recap for anybody. But I read this book before I ever met you, John, and we met first, I believe, at an Aptify users conference, long time ago. And this was the book that I think that was hot at the time. It's like a staple reading for every business. I keep a stack of them over here, and I give them to everybody that we meet. So it's one of those things that I was drawn to very early on, which drew me to you. And then you wrote the foreword for Vitamin B, which I appreciate very much. And you've been awesome coming to visit with us on a regular basis and collaborating with me on projects. So, dude, really, really, really appreciate you being here. And I saw you do this talk via video. I saw it maybe 8 weeks ago. And I called you immediately and said, can you please bring that information to our group? And can you share that with our group? Obviously, we're recording this session. Anybody that's here today, anybody that registered, we'll also have it up on a blog so people can go back and view it. But the content of that was amazing. And you said that you've now had to update that based on new things that are happening and new learnings that are going on. So we're beginning to move faster and faster and faster, not just through the pandemic, but through life in general. So yeah. I think it's a perfect time for us to bring this to the audience. We are live on Facebook, so if anybody has any comments or questions, please put them in the Q&A box in chat, or we have Leah managing the Facebook feed, so you can put it in comments there if you want to grab it there. So I want to quickly turn it over to you. I've got a list of things that say you're amazing on here, but everybody kind of knows that, and we'll skip that. And you give us your wisdom about the future of work and the pillars, and let's walk through that.
Cool. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and put some slides up, and then we'll go around those. As I'm putting that up, let me do this. I want to make something clear that I am not a futurist. I am much more of what we call a todayist. And I focus for my clients on things that are coming and headed our way, except for the things that are going to happen right now, how they will impact us. This is actually a class I've been teaching at the Wharton School of Business for about 10 years, and every year I have to update it. And as Andy said, he saw me a little while ago. I actually did this right after the pandemic started for a large group of CEOs. And even since then, I've had to pretty dramatically update what's going on with it. So we'll get started here. And here's one of the challenges during this. I don't know everybody that's watching. Obviously, I don't know your businesses, whether you're B2C or B2B or consultant or whatever it might be. So I really want to challenge you throughout this entire presentation. Every slide I put up, say, what does this mean to me? How can I use this? And the most important thing is, what can I do right away? I want you to be able to take these ideas and put them into action as quickly as possible. Remember, this is going to get recorded, but I challenge you, get some notes out, because you're going to want to take a few notes. And I'm going to try to end this a little bit early, so we got plenty of time for Q&A, because I think the Q&A on this is where some of the most robust information comes out. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to kind of set the stage here. There's 3 things I plan to cover. Some of the big technology trends that we're in right now, a lot around changing consumer and business behavior. And at the last, I'm going to hit those 3 pillars we talked about that I believe you need to be highly effective as a leader in the future. So with that said, let's move it forward. Right now, we're in what's called the fourth industrial revolution, also called the post-digital era, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But we started with the first industrial revolution. You can see it there, steam engines, beginning to do things like that. Moved into the next one, electricity, on assembly lines, things of that nature. You can see next one is computing. That's kind of where we live now, but it's starting to move into the fourth industrial revolution. And here's some interesting things that drive that. There's basically three big things. Computer speed, which I'm going to hit in a second and tell you about that, but just for a minute. Big data, which computer speed is driving, and that's got things like blockchain and Bitcoin and stuff like that is added in there. And then the last one is artificial intelligence. And I'm hoping that at the end, there's lots of questions around that. I could have put 50 slides in here about AI, but I thought we'd do that in the Q&A. And the important thing to note also as I go through this is not computers versus people. It's what we call cyber physical. It's the partnership, if you will, of computers and AI and all these technologies with human beings. So it's not Skynet quite yet, but it's a little interesting. So what I want to do is start with this first one, computer speed. Your average laptop that most of us use does about 217,000 or 217 billion computations per second for your average laptop. A supercomputer today does about 8 trillion computations per second. Very, very, very impressive. The fastest supercomputer in the world right now is in Japan, and they're edging up. I literally, when I do this presentation, I have to check it every day. I had to check it today before I came on to see who's got the fastest supercomputer in the world. But if you go beyond supercomputers and you go to quantum computers, Google has the fastest one now that does 33,806 trillion computations per second. If you took, they gave it a math problem to solve. If you gave that math problem to a supercomputer, not a laptop, but a supercomputer doing the 8 trillion operations per second, it would have taken it 10,000 years to solve that problem. 10,000 years. The quantum computer from Google did it in 200 seconds. So I wanted to sort of lay that as a framework because a lot of the things driving all the stuff that I'm going to talk about and touch every one of our lives, both personally and business, is this massive, computer speed, computer availability, big data, on and on. So let's hit some key things. What I want to talk about now is really what's changed since COVID. A lot of technology has been moving quickly, but it got compressed. A lot of it got compressed. What have been 5 or 6 or 10 years of development really into this year. We've seen incredible advances and huge changes. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about has been literally in the last 3 or 4 months, 5 months that have been happening. The first thing I want to cover is all of the new ways we work. I think, we're on here right now. We've all gotten used to instantly virtual everything. Meeting, leadership, sales calls, teaching our kids online. One of my clients said this. He said, one day I had 186 employees. The next day I had 186 field offices. Many of the companies I consult with, in a matter of 3 or 4 days, got hundreds of people back to their houses, and we're all still adjusting to how do you do all of this virtually. And Andy, we might want to talk about this later, you will do it, is probably the biggest place that I'm seeing difficulties in companies right now is how do I maintain a strong and engaged virtual culture? So we'll probably get that to Q&A. The next one, office space. I looked out to my clients, I surveyed them. 70% or more say that most of the people will never come back to our office, or very few, maybe for a couple of days a week. Many of them had told people, you don't ever have to come back if you don't want to. So that's a huge change. I've got 2 banks I work for, and one of them has 400 and something employees. They're thinking about 330 will not return to the office or will only come in a day or 2 a week. Also, when I'm working with executives right now, I have a lot of them saying a couple of things. I don't know why I made that trip. I don't know why I was in that meeting. I don't know why I took that call. Now that I've changed everything to virtually, I don't know if I'll ever really get back on a plane very often. These are, Andy's like me. I used to do 200, 220 days a year on the road. I have not left my hometown of Gainesville, Florida, since the date of the pandemic, COVID-19, whatever you want to call it, since that started. So I've got a lot of folks saying business travel is going to change dramatically. If I can do it all virtually, why in the world would I get on a plane or go to a hotel? Hopefully some of that will change so Andy and I can go visit people and help them out in person, but a lot of it like this is going virtual. And now I want to go into a little bit of the future stuff. There's Zoom, but now that we've done Zoom, they're going to advance the way we virtually interact with people. This is basically a telepresence, and these are avatars, and you would go on and create one for yourself, and these exist now. This technology exists now. People use it. You've got to wear VR goggles to do it. But you can have people beam in and you see this. They've got a room set up that looks like they're in the space shuttle or something, or the space station. And you can interact. You can bring things up. You can bring documents up and look at all that. That's here available now. The next step beyond that is going to be holographic meetings. These also exist right now, but you've got to wear VR goggles to see these. But you can have anyone telepresence in, and what they have is 2 rooms that are basically laid out the same, with the same sort of furniture and everything, and could be anywhere in the world. You go in, put on the VR goggles, and it's just like you're standing in the room with the other person. This is the next step. Unless you think this isn't going to happen, this is really cool. At the Illinois Museum of the Holocaust, they went out and interviewed, this is through Steven Spielberg, many, I think it was several dozen Holocaust survivors, and put them in a 3D room with all the cameras and everything green screen, and asked them hundreds of questions and let them tell their story. They answered 55,000 questions over the course of while they were shooting all this. And you can go into the museum, sit down, and have a discussion with a Holocaust survivor. They'll tell you your story, but you can ask them questions. You can ask them, what happened to them, about their childhood. I was watching one, do you want vengeance? And it was this gentleman right here saying, no, I don't. Vengeance isn't going to solve anything. So it's amazing. Right now, today, you can literally go and sit down, and they've got a couple dozen different people you can talk to, and talk to a Holocaust survivor, ask them questions, have a conversation. And it also does it in 6 different languages, so you can hear it in your mother tongue. That technology exists today. It will likely exist in our businesses within a year to 18 months, something like that, or at least with the VR goggles. This is what I'm seeing as, and Andy, if any time you want to hop in and ask a question or cut me off or add something, please feel free to.
Yeah. Go back one slide real quick.
Sure. And your volume is fairly low.
How's that? Is that better? I can get a little closer.
Little bit. For some reason, you sound way off to me at this end.
I don't know why. Yeah, I saw this. I think it was on 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
Somebody asked the question, "What's the weather like?" And the response was, "I'm a hologram. I don't have that information." Like even at that point, they were attempting to trick him up. But I thought this was really, really cool. My comment to my daughter was, "Wouldn't this be cool for like me to be able to do this for great grandkids?"
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So being able to pass along or have a conversation with your great grandfather years and years and years from now in this type of medium, I thought it was really like a practical purpose for us. It's kind of cool.
That's I never thought, without kids, I never thought about. That is neat. And all kinds of other stuff, passing knowledge down. So really cool idea. I hadn't thought about that. Let's go to this. This is how shopping is changing. And a lot of this is impersonal, things like that. Online everything. If you're not online, you don't have access to the world. It's very, very difficult now to run a successful business if a large portion of it isn't online and easily accessible. The other thing there we've got is contactless. We spent all this time to create touchpads everywhere for your credit cards and things like that. What we're going to see is things moving to voice control. People aren't going to want to touch anything. If you go into a store to look at something, it's going to have to be constantly being cleaned and updated and wiped down. And we see that already with restaurants. We've got McDonald's where you come in, you stand at one place, they take your order there. You don't use a touch screen. You order by voice. We're going to see more and more contactless interactions with customers. We're going to do hyper-local, hyper-customized. I want something from just down the street, and I want it exactly the way I want it. I want it a little bit different from everyone. I want some level of uniqueness and customization. And we'll see in a minute why that's so critical, because people are not spending as much money. And so they want the things that they get to be really cool just for them. A lot of this too is going to be driven by AI. The best example there is Amazon. They basically know everything I order. As a matter of fact, now for some of you, if you're a Prime member, I saw that recently the number I think is 35% of all purchases in the United States are made through Amazon. And for some of us, it's not next day, they can deliver it the same day. And the way they do that is when they've got an area with a large number of customers, they've got an algorithm that reads what those customers want, and they build a distribution center in that town, and the algorithm anticipates what the people in that community are going to buy, and they pre-stock it so that when you order it, they've already got it, they're on your way onto your way to your house in a couple of hours. So, and for those of us that do this, I mean, they recommend stuff to me. My wife and I, everything's automatic. Our, paper towels, soap, everything that's a household staple pretty much, Gatorade, water, whatever I need, all of that's on auto order. We don't touch it. It knows us. It shows up. It delivers it. Most of the stuff we get now is through Amazon. If you change it now, also grocery stores. We've got DoorDash and Grubhub and I forget, Cart Check or whatever it is. I have not stepped foot in a grocery store except for maybe 3 or 4 times since the pandemic started. And that's only when there's something I had to have for a recipe or something. We didn't have it. I ran down, got it, and got back home. All the rest of our groceries, staples, everything is delivered by someone else and dropped off on our front porch. And now I look at it and say, why would I do it any differently going forward? Is there any reason for me to go to the grocery store or someplace in town? So that's a big impact for local businesses. Of I can get it all delivered to my door today or tomorrow easily. Now we're going to take it one step further. You can order your stuff online and have a human drive it to your house and drop it off from your grocery store. Or here's the newest steps. Kroger up there in your corner is autonomous vehicle delivering your groceries. You order it, they shop for it, they pick it, they put it in bags, they put it in this car, it drives it to your house. I don't know if any of you have seen it now, but Domino's has autonomous Ford cars that drive up to your house, call you on your cell phone, you walk out, a window opens up, your pizza slides out, it says thank you, it closes back up, boom, and the car drives away. And that is being tested in cities around the country right now. Autonomous cars delivering your pizza. And then you see in the other one, if you don't want to tell them what to shop or you want fresh vegetables, this is a little grocery store that will roll up to your house or your office. And you can go out and get fresh veggies, fresh juice, whatever you might want. Now the grocery store is going to start to come to you fully autonomous. Think of the impact on all of the drivers and delivery drivers. My UPS driver, I talked to him not too long ago, he said, eventually, and they're already right now, when you get a package, you bring it to the UPS store, they will drive it to the local distribution center. It is picked and processed by robots in the future, some places now, put an autonomous truck, an autonomous semi, driven to another distribution center, put on an airplane, and the goal is by 2026 for UPS to fly all of its planes worldwide with less than 10 pilots. Everything from a command center, everything done with artificial intelligence. That plane will land unpacked by robots, picked and processed by robots, put in autonomous cars, driven to your house. Whole chain basically there, done by robots and AI. Next, this is a big thing that's happening. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm starting to hit this myself, a little bit of the burnout. Here's the big areas we see people needing help or spending more money in. Mental health, big issue right now. A lot of people struggling with anxiety, stress, depression. That's becoming a very big area where money's being spent. Also, I don't know if any of you have done this too. I've only gone to a doctor's office once. Everything else has been telehealth. Everything else is call in, check in. They can do, we've got a machine in our house. They can do your blood pressure. They can check on your pulse all by computer. I sleep with a CPAP. All of that stuff is downloaded. My doctor calls me and tells me how things are going, automatically changes the settings through the internet. So a lot of that stuff going online. Here's a new interested one is assisted development. And this is now people who are stuck at home and want a hobby that they've never had before. Maybe they want to learn to paint. So they hire an instructor to meet with them once a week or play music or whatever it might be, to be their assisted developer, someone to help them and help them learn a new thing. Before the pandemic, this is an interesting one. There's actually a library, and I believe it's in Michigan, where you can go check out a person. That if you, let's say you want to learn something about Buddhism, you literally check out a Buddhist monk, and you come and for an hour you sit and chat with them. I'm sure that's going to go now all online, but it was even being done in person before the pandemic came. I just did some work for a company or did some consulting and helping for a company in Hawaii that did helicopter tours of the entire island for families. They've now moved that entire thing on virtual, where the entire family gets on and watches from the helicopter as it flies around the island, goes on the beach, everything, and they have a virtual vacation together, even having restaurants in their local area deliver the same sort of food so they can all sit, have basically a luau together, go on a helicopter ride together, do all of that without ever leaving their living rooms or house. And then here's a really fun one, virtual companions. And Andy, this is a little bit like your great-great-great-grandfather, except for it's in super modern times. Here's Mike, my friend from New Zealand. Actually, this is not a human being. This is a computer-generated virtual companion. Through the camera, this AI, or they call it, what do they call it? Computer human or something like that. They can see your eyes, they can see your expression, they hear the tone of your voice, they can intuit, if that's the right word, your emotions, if you've got concern or stress or you're happy or sad. And I normally when I do this, I show a bunch of videos, but that doesn't work well through Zoom. So it shows people come home with their computer, their laptop, they open it up, the virtual companion welcomes them home, asks them how their day was. I think this is interesting if you look at a lot of people right now that are isolated, that aren't married or don't have partners. I could see, and this is already up and available, where people would come home, have a communication, have a conversation, talk to them. We've also got now robotic kitchen assistants that could cook dinner for you. And again, all of this stuff exists now. It sounds very futuristic, but these are things you could buy now to have come home and have your food pre-made for you by a robotic chef, sit and talk to your AI companion, and then do all of your meetings virtually. So some pretty scary but interesting stuff. Next thing I want to hit, we're doing good on time here, is how is consumer behavior changing? The new expectations are, I want it now, I want it immediately, I want it the way I want it, or actually I want it before I even realize I want it. Everything's measured now in download speed. How fast can I get something? If I have to wait a little bit more than I'm used to or want to, I will automatically go someplace else, which is a really interesting idea that one of my clients told me about, an idea he had called forced switching. And this is when this was his explanation. He has kids and he ordered his food from the local grocery store to be delivered. They love Jif peanut butter, but the grocery store was out of Jif, so they sent him Peter Pan. He said, we got the Peter Pan, it's better than Jif. We love it. We'll never switch back. He said, but interesting thing, I never would have tried it had I not been forced to switch because what I wanted wasn't available. The idea there is your brand, your consumer, your product, your service. If people want it now and immediately, if there's any holdup, they will quickly abandon, in some cases, their brand affiliation and go with a different product they could get faster or more unique or delivered right away. Big focus on health right now. We're going to see the healthcare system, a lot of money invested in that. These two next ones go together. Hibernate and spend and conscientious consumption, actually the next one. People are going to stay home. We saw this a little bit during the recession. One of the areas where a lot of money was spent was in makeup, lipstick, eyeliner, things like that, that people wanted to, or going to Starbucks and getting a $12 Frappalapadopi or whatever they call that thing, or people were saying, I don't have a lot of money to spend, but I'm going to spend, I'm going to go extravagant on some small thing, some small pleasure, and I want to make sure that it's friendly to the earth, that it's recyclable, that the company I buy from takes great care of their employees. One of the things that's changed in consumer behavior is it used to be that you bought in large part on features, benefit, and price. Now for a lot of products and services, features, benefit, price are all equal. Delivery, I can get it delivered right away from any place. So all those come off as decision makers. The next levels that we see people go into, three things, is the company environmentally friendly? Do they treat their employees well? And do they have a purpose I believe in? So it's an interesting shift in the decision-making process from product to purpose. And I think we're going to see more of that. And it's also something we're seeing with employees who are choosing to work for companies, not necessarily just for title or paycheck, but a huge motivator is, am I doing meaningful work? And do I feel like our company has a purpose that I really am committed to and want to make happen? Huge media consumption. It's only going to get bigger. Netflix, Apple TV, all the other stuff. People are binge watching and spending a lot more on that. I don't think we're going to see a lot of people headed back to the movie theater or anything like that soon. And then here's another one to think about is the sharing economy. A lot of people before the pandemic were already using Uber and other things and sharing bikes and sharing rides and those sort of stuff. With a recession and a pandemic and some other stuff, we might see people trying to share as much stuff as they can to reduce their outflow and reduce their footprint on the earth. So these are some things to be thinking about how they will impact your organization. So let's look at what your business has to do to keep up with this. You're going to have e-commerce options for everybody. No matter what you sell, no matter what kind of a service, people are going to need to buy it through the internet. A lot of your stuff is going to go to virtual customer relationships. And some of the companies I'm working with are saying their sales are actually better. People will get on Zoom, they can make a call, they can get to decision makers. Let's back up for a second and remember Mike from New Zealand. Think about Mike with all of that ability to look at other people, intuit their emotions, all that stuff, using Mike now as your customer service relationship person. Very difficult, almost impossible to tell it's AI. It can have a full conversation, sort of like the Holocaust folks we were talking about, and be able to take and replace your customer service operation with virtual people that can handle your customers as well or better than a living person could, a normal person could. Lots more robotics. We've seen both in autonomous vehicles, things like that, but now contactless food. There are several restaurants that were open before the pandemic, and now when we go back to going out, where all of your meal is made by a robot, never touched by a human. Loaded into a giant conveyor belt machine. You order a hamburger, it cuts the onions, it cuts the lettuce, it cuts the tomatoes, it cooks the hamburger perfectly, puts on whatever toppings you want, comes out at the end of the conveyor belt, you pick up and walk away. You've got a beautiful meal made without one person touching it once it started to get made. I think a lot of us figured out, and a lot of my clients figured out, that you better have more than one place to buy from if you have supply chain. When China went down, and then parts of Brazil and Taiwan and things of that nature, a lot of people found out that sole source supplying was a dangerous thing. We're seeing a lot of people inshoring stuff, bringing things back, building factories in the United States to make sure that they have a backup to their supply chain worldwide, wherever they were getting their stuff from. Also, two other things that I'm seeing, and I think it's going to increase, is a lot of opportunities for mergers and acquisitions. Many of the folks I've seen are looking at it and saying, now is a really good time to buy up my competition if I can afford to do it, and buy the best ones while they're maybe struggling a little bit. And now is an amazing time to get talent. With some people leaving companies, there's going to be some amazing talent available. The other side of this coin is you need to really treat the people you have now amazingly well. Be super close to your folks. Let them know that you appreciate them. They're important to your company because, and here's one of my favorite sayings, the customer's experience will never exceed the employee's experience. Love on your employees, make them feel safe, make sure they feel like they belong, they're well appreciated, they'll stay engaged. They will then go out and take great care of your customers. So let's move on. We're doing really good here. Got about 2 more slides, Andy. The last one's going to be a couple of minutes, and then we can get into some Q&A, and you can beat me up and ask all kinds of questions. So here's some of the ideas and suggestions I have. I was just talking about extreme employee focus. The reason is you want extreme customer focus. How you treat your employees and your customers right now, they will remember for years to come. Now is the time to love on them, take care of them, meet and exceed their needs, understand them deeply, using virtual tools, using in-person things, but to create the strongest relationship you possibly can with your customer and keep them loyal. Another one of my favorite phrases is, whoever owns the voice of the customer owns the marketplace. Now is the time to triple down on that. We're going to look at, and we're seeing this too, we're going to have to build companies, and we're starting to do this with flexible teams, moving around. We're seeing a lot of silos broken down now, people talking to folks they normally wouldn't have talked to, getting on Zoom calls, sending each other texts. Got to have lots of transparent communication as much as you possibly can. I'm sure Andy will underline this in a minute, but in every company I've ever worked with around the world, communication is always a problem. Now we've got lots of communication channels, but we've got to use all those to build trust, to let people know that we care about them, we appreciate them, share lots of information, because the only way to keep those networks open is to keep a high level of trust, transparency, candor, things of that nature. We're moving to very fast, decentralized, data-driven decision-making. One of the CEOs I work with mentioned me the other day, we're making better decisions faster than we ever have. We used to sit down and talk about something, have a meeting about what we talked about, and follow that up with a meeting. Now we'll look at it, we look at the data, we talk to each other, we make a decision, we move fast. What I've seen is some people that would have taken them 3 months or 4 months to make a decision can get it down to 1 day or 2 days, which allows them to move much quicker, which gets in the last two things is you're going to be taking a lot of risks, and you've got to be able to accept some failures and mistakes. As long as they don't blow up something that's, business critical, you want people to move fast, iterate, be agile and adaptable, which will get us to the last two key ideas I want to talk about before we go to Q&A. We said we're in the fourth industrial revolution. Andy, for your kids and your grandkids, actually your kids and the younger ones, we're now in what's called moving into the post-digital era. And what that means is the people today, high school and below, are growing up never knowing anything but technology. They've always had AI. They've always had the Zoom calls, meetings, laptops, computers. I didn't get my first cell phone until I was 26 years old. I know a lot of people whose 3-year-olds have iPads and can use them better than I can use them or you can use them. An interesting thing is most of the kids that are under the age of 5 right now will likely never drive a car. It will be all autonomous vehicles. They will likely not visit a live doctor very often, if at all. They will grow up with telemedicine. They will grow up expecting things to be delivered immediately. So we've got a whole generation coming up, and I don't know how the pandemic, with not going back to school or being apart for a year, I have not thought through how that's going to impact people. But I believe it's going to change the way the generation that's coming through this right now, the way they approach friendship, their life, interacting with other people could be a big thing. So what I wanted to finish up is we talked about the 3 pillars. And given everything I just talked to you about, technology, computer speed, consumer behavior, impacts on business, I believe there's 3 things that leaders need, 3 quotients that leaders need to be successful in the future. The first one is IQ. Your intelligence quotient, but I'm not really talking about the number here. I'm talking about your dedication to lifelong learning, to constantly trying to grow and improve. Statistic I use all the time that just blows people away. The average college graduate reads a half a book a year after they graduate from college. And that's anything, fiction, nonfiction, just a half a book a year. If you were to read one, and I'll call this self-help book, a nonfiction business book or self-help book to improve your skills, you will read one every other month, 6 books a year, you're in the top 1% in the United States of America or whatever country you live in, top 1%. If you read one book a month, 12 books a year, you're in top 1% on the face of the earth. So IQ here is a dedication to lifelong learning and constantly learning new things, bringing new things in, which we'll get to here in just a second. EQ is your emotional quotient. And to me, this is self-awareness and empathy put together. And it's becoming now, excuse me, as important or more important than IQ. As long as you've got a fundamental level of competency, the next step is you have to be able to get along well with other people. In some of my classes, I will ask people to make a list, put best boss ever, worst boss ever. and ask them to make a list under that of what made this one so good. What are the skills, the attitudes, the attributes? What about this person made you love them and want to follow them? What about this person made you say, I want to leave, I can't stand this person, I got to get out of here? I'll have them list that down. Then next to each one, I will say, write whether it's an IQ issue or an EQ issue. Is it about competence, something they didn't know, they were incompetent, they didn't know well, they didn't have the IQ to do it? Or was it an emotional connection, feeling, behavior thing? Typically right now, it's about 9-to-1 EQ over IQ. That's how critical this is. And it's a skill, myself included, that a lot of us struggle with, but it can be learned. You can improve your EQ by trying to deeply understand other people and make a genuine connection with them. The last one, though, which I believe is now the most important, is your AQ, or your adaptability or agility quotient. And this is both as an individual and as an organization. And adaptability is all around being able to take in lots of new ideas and information, your competencies at IQ, and then being able to discard old things that don't work anymore. I like to say try on new ideas, do risks, do experiments, constantly moving forward and being agile and adaptable. Some of the things that go around that are incredible high level of curiosity, the willingness to be very flexible. This is, again, as an individual and organization. And then the last one, which I'm sure Andy will enjoy here, is around grit and resilience and persistence and getting up every day, 1%, constantly trying to get just a little bit better, a little bit faster, and adapt and adjust more than your competition is. One of the phrases I use, and I'll end on this, is to be successful in the future, the rate of internal innovation must exceed the rate of external innovation. And with that, Andy, I think I'm right about on time with where we wanted to be on this, and we can go to some Q&A and some you razzing me and giving me a hard time because you're good at that.
Can you hear me? Is the volume working? All right, so I bounced around and switched it. I love that internal innovation has to be at a rate higher than external innovation is happening. And I think right now, external innovation is happening at a very fast rate. So this, you got to get up every single day and recognize that you had better get better yourself. And that leads me to one of my questions I want to ask you. And I took a bunch of notes here.
Good, I'm glad.
All of this is very exciting. It's also scary at the exact same time. I think people listen to what you're saying and they're like, holy crap. And what do you mean my son's not going to ever drive a car?
Yeah.
What do you mean that somebody's going to have a living boyfriend that's, a robot? What do you feel, and this goes right back to lifelong learning. What are the skills that somebody needs to be chasing right now to be ready for that change in the very near future?
Okay, so in the very near future, it's going to be increasing competence, that I'm learning, I'm studying my trade, my craft, whatever it might be, getting better and better and better. Added to that, and then getting more important as we go forward in the future, is going to be soft skills, EQ. As AI and robots begin to replace some jobs, it's going to create lots of new jobs. But there's something that artificial intelligence and robots can't replace. That's the human touch, true emotions, true connection. So we're going to see, and you're seeing it now, a whole bunch of people are going into counseling, mental health, going into the healthcare industry. Although there's a lot of robotics and computers there, you're never going to be able to make a human connection there. So, look in Australia right now, about 35 to 40% of all financial advisors are what are called robo-advisors. But they still need human advisors, because I'm not going to let a robot decide the investment strategy for my grandmother. I got to have somebody I trust, believe in, and connected with.
Because they want that, not because necessarily it's better, correct?
I have a living advisor, but it's the algorithms and all the information and the robo stuff that comes to him that allows his firm to make great decisions for me. I want the AI, but I want to sit down across from John Fisher and talk about his family and my family, or now on Zoom, and how we're doing, and trust that he's always going to do what's in my best interest, not just only what the algorithm says.
So, John, you talked about EQ. You said, hey, even myself, totally agree, even myself. This is a place that we can learn. What are the top 2 or 3 things that somebody can do to begin that journey of learning to be better in that space of EQ?
It's a great question, and there's a couple things. The first one is self-awareness. To make a connection with other people, you have to understand your own emotions. If you're angry or mad or upset, or what am I feeling now? Which for someone like me, maybe you and a few other people, I'm not used to asking that question. What am I feeling? I might say, what am I thinking? So step one is self-awareness. Hard to connect with other people if you don't understand your other emotions. The other thing is curiosity, and the other one would be vulnerability. The ability to express your emotions, be vulnerable enough to ask questions, be truly, deeply, and genuinely curious about what the other person is thinking, feeling. And I think also, and we see this in sales or in coaching, I think it's important to be curious, ask questions, and listen. EQ is about connecting with other people, not telling them something. So those are the things I see. And I'll give you two quick pieces of advice I learned. I'm 56 now, been married just about 21 years. And it's only been in the last couple of years I learned these two phrases, which have made a major change in my coaching, but also in my marriage, which is fantastic. But here they are. Number one is, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? And the other one, which is also good for coaching, is what I'm about to say right now going to add any value at all to this conversation? And I found that if I ask those two questions, about 70 to 80% of the time, I don't want to be right. I want to be happy. No reason to win this argument. And I really don't need to say anything here. It's better to listen to the other person and understand them than tell a story or tell them what to do. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. And I heard it said this way once. It's always easy to be right. It's also easy to be right and alone. So, exactly.
Very well put.
Hey, unpack. I think AI is one of these kind of misunderstood things. So, from your perspective, talk a little bit about AI and machine learning and what the kind of nuanced differences in the two. And aren't we in some sort of a tipping point and going from machine learning into more AI at this point?
Yeah, well, there's positive sides to this and scary sides to this. The AI now can do, I mean, if I wanted someone to look at an x-ray of if I thought I had cancer, you can go and have someone who's looked at x-rays, been doing it 20 years, probably looked at 100,000 or maybe 150,000. You can go to a computer that can pull in 45 or 50 or 100 million examples, scan that thing a couple thousand times in a second and give you something that's 99% accurate. I still want a doctor to look at it, but if out of the two, I want the thing that looks at 50 million and has access to all that data, giving me the diagnosis as much as I can. So there's great things that AI do. There's also, I didn't put this in the slide, so I'm glad you asked about it. A little bit in the middle of last year, Facebook had two chatbots, which I think we all know what those are. They're things that interact with people. They put the two chatbots together and said, they taught them a game to negotiate stuff. I'm going to trade you this hat for this ball. I'm going to trade you this stuffed animal for whatever it might be. And they set them loose. Within 2 hours, they had begun to become very aggressive and had created a new language that the two of them were talking to, that the scientists could not understand what they were saying to each other. And they were escalating in aggressiveness and in manipulation and talking in a language they couldn't understand. So I had to pull the plug on them and literally get the machines offline. And the nice people at Facebook said, oh, it's just because the experiment wasn't going the way we wanted to. I think it might have been a little bit more than that. So here's the interesting thing that is a thought experiment we do when I teach this class at Wharton. Autonomous cars. They're going to be online. We're now getting flying cars, autonomous helicopters, all that other stuff. So they're going to be here. They're already starting to be here. Here's the thought experiment. Autonomous cars coming into a intersection. You're riding. There's not even a wheel in the car anymore. Somebody's going to get hit. There's somebody in the sidewalk. There's some people standing over here talking. There's a couple over here. There's a tree. Someone's going to die. It's going to hit someone and kill someone. Who does it kill? You hit the tree. Does it kill the old people because they're old anyways? They've had a pretty good life, and or does it hit this young couple over here, or does it hit this person? The car's going to hit somebody. How does the car decide who to hit? Ethics. Question: who programmed in the ethics? Yeah. And the question we go to there is, how does it measure the value of a life to decide which life to end?
Tricky. Yeah, that's the scary part of all this. Hey, talk a little bit about life impact. You kind of went there for a second. I'd like for you to go back. You said, hey, I haven't really thought through exactly how the pandemic and our kids not being in school or not being around other kids and what that impact actually is. But expand on that from your perspective. What is the younger generation, the elementary, middle school, maybe even high school? What do you think the impact's going to be on them, the way they have relationships in the future, et cetera?
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to give me your feedback, your ideas after this, but I don't have kids. But here's what I've been seeing: college kids and other folks that I do work with, and my friends' kids, is they were already pretty addicted to technology. I've got plenty of people, they can sit in opposite rooms and text each other. They were already doing a lot of stuff online, everything. I think that this is going to create some level of fear around personal interaction. It's probably going to drive people more into technology. I don't know if the backlash will be that we'll have fewer relationships, but stronger ones. And this is interesting, Andy. You and I are an example of this. We haven't seen each other in person in years. We've talked to each other and Zoomed with each other more in the last 3 months than in our entire relationship. I've made reconnections with people around the world that I normally only talk to once a year, once every 2 years. We're on every couple of weeks chatting. So I don't know if we're going to move to some sort of virtual relationships that are strong, but I don't know how that impacts you as an individual. Unfortunately, I had to go to a funeral this weekend, and I was there, and we were all wearing masks and stuff, and it was a friend of mine's son got killed in a car crash. And I went to hug his mom, and I hugged her, and I backed up and realized that's the first human being other than my wife I have physically touched since the pandemic. Think about that. 6 months, 7 months. What's it like if you live as a child or something, if you're grown up, or let's say you're single and you don't have anybody else around you? What does it feel like to go 5, 6, 7 months without a hug, a kiss, a handshake? I don't know what the ramification of that is. Also, the stress and depression that a lot of us are feeling, I don't know how long that's going to last. So I'm really confused on this. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with the technology side. And, my daughters are pretty young, so 19 and 22. So they're, as you said, they were already pretty heavy into tech. I watched them connect on tech. My daughter right now, I don't think she's watching this, but we only say that because I don't think I'm supposed to know, but I think she has a boyfriend that she's never met. Like they're in 2 separate schools in 2 different places, but they communicate on technology, and I think they consider themselves, boyfriend and girlfriend because of that. So it's an oddity thing to me. And I agree. I think the connections that they're going to be able to cultivate in the future will be tougher for them. So this whole EQ piece being important, we need to make sure that, I think we need to make sure working with the younger generation so they're clear on, we're talking to people that are working in businesses all the time and already in a career, but getting that information to the kids, I think is going to be important too.
And and this is hard, but how do you create a genuine connection with some level of EQ with someone you've never seen face to face? You've never sat down and, had a cup of coffee with or lunch or hung out or told a lot of stories about your family or whatever. It's just, here I am and we're talking to each other and it seems like we know each other. But I've got a really, really good friend in Russia who I've never met and probably might never meet, but we talk almost every week. I'm not quite sure how that follows that, but come down to business. How do we do that with our customers? Right. How do we interact with our customers virtually? How do we create trust and connection and emotional ties to our customers who we may not go and visit for years? I've got several people who say, unless it's absolutely an emergency, I am not getting on a plane and flying to do another customer call unless they demand that I be there. Yeah,
we're hearing it's pretty much the same thing. Let me get some tactical stuff. Let's see. Oh, let's come back to this. Strong, engaged virtual culture. You mentioned this and said, hey, let's unpack that during Q&A. And if anybody else has any questions, please put them in the Q&A section or put them on Facebook comments and we'll bring them up. This is something I thought about, culture at a distance type thing. What do you feel organizations can do, or individuals? Like the culture is the individual. So how do we do this at a distance?
Okay, I just put together a video on this because it's been so important. I talked about three key things that people need to do to keep their culture strong. SBA. The F stands for safety. People want safety at multiple levels. First of all, they want physical safety. If I come back to the office, I want to know I'm not going to get COVID-19. I want to know my employer is doing everything they can to keep me physically safe, emotionally safe. In our last webinar, you and I together, we talked about the fact that people right now are under tremendous stress. They're going through a cycle when people are faced with what they perceive as negative change. They go through the same cycle as if someone close to them had died. So they want to be emotionally safe to say, I'm hurting, I'm scared, I'm anxious, I'm stressful, I'm burned out, I'm depressed, whatever it might be, and know that you will be there to support them and help them. And then the next one is safety belongingness. This is really hard at a distance, but we need to keep telling people we care about you. You're part of the tribe, you're part of the team, you're part of the group. This is why we're doing a lot of virtual happy hours, virtual movie nights, virtual trivia, trying to keep that somewhat of a personal connection away from business to say, you're important, you're part of the team, you're part of the family, part of the tribe. And then the last one, appreciation, which has always been big, but this is going out of your way. And the research, I've been teaching culture for quite a while. Research used to say that someone needed some sort of genuine, honest, sincere praise about once every 7 to 10 days. Now it's been compressed to maybe once every 2 to 3 days, which means you have to create a culture of catching people doing things right and celebrating everything. Small win, medium win, big win, and taking the time to do a Zoom call or send a text or make a phone call and say, hey, Andy, you did a great job in that last sales call, or you did a great job on that PowerPoint or that presentation. And I just want to let you know that we appreciate it. I know you're working hard and you're staying up and it's not going unnoticed. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I especially think leaders and managers need to go out of their way to do this more now. So tactical, flood your organization with safety, belongingness, appreciation. The nice thing about that, it doesn't cost anything. Those are all EQ, emotional atmosphere issues.
Good. That's a good one. And I like that, appreciation's always been something that's really big for us. You've talked about it for years and years and years, and putting a metric to it. I'm a metric guy. So if you tell me, every 2 days it needs to happen, it goes in there and gets checked off every 2 days. Does your book, Awesomely Simple, address ways to positively impact IQ, EQ, and AQ?
No, it does IQ and a little bit AQ, but EQ, it's funny, great question, and I get to shoot down my own book, but EQ has only come into sort of vogue or understanding around servant leadership, things like maybe like in the last 6 or 7 years. My book's about 10 years old. AQ is something that's only been around formally maybe a year, 2 years. My wife is the one that introduced it to me. She found it through Wharton, and it's just now, they're just now starting to come up with surveys and assessments to look at AQ. So that didn't even exist when I wrote my book.
Yeah, so there's lots of resources out there, but you unpacked that with us a little bit, the areas to focus on, so I appreciate that. This is a question I wrote as you were talking, and with all of these changes, with this cultural shift, and what are we going to lose? And I'm going to phrase it this way. What are we going to lose as a society? And do you feel like we should fight to protect it, or should we allow it to be lost?
I'm looking at my clock going, how long do we have for this answer?
Got about 7 minutes.
Okay, so what we're losing right now on a general thing is the human connection. And I don't know with the illness and everything, how we can fight to get that back. When I originally started thinking about these things, it was because I was invited to a big conference with Sergey Brin, Larry Page, Jeff Bezos, a whole bunch of people. And we were talking all this through. And the major concern, and you hear this from Bill Gates and some other folks, is what happens to the people caught in the middle that can't keep up with the technology? And they're basically going to be a lost generation of folks that, and probably it got sped up really fast right now with what just happened with the pandemic. But if you can't handle Zoom and computers and virtual and things like that, or your job can't be done that way, you just got left out in a big way. Again, the technology will create jobs, but I don't know right now, especially how fast this has happened, if we can create enough new jobs to keep up with the industries that are going to be damaged, the companies that are going away, and the push towards AI and robotics and other things like that to replace human workers. Depending on the length of the pandemic, that may become more and more and more, but regardless, it's sped it up. So I'm worried about how do we handle that big group of people that are going to need support and education to help them get up to speed, or get the generation behind them up to speed to be able to handle this new kind of world of work we have.
Yeah, and this is not like new news, right? So we've heard from Diamandis and Salim and all the, for years and years and years talking about this and kind of warning us, hey, and I hear you say UPS is going to run on 10% of its workforce in the next 6 years. There's a lot of people that work at UPS.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that deliver pizza. There's a lot of people that work at the grocery store. Like, there's a lot of those kinds of jobs. And again, it's not new. Like, we know that stuff is coming. The pandemic is speeding it up. To your point, there needs to be new skills. People need to be looking for ways, whether it be technology or other completely different things. What are they going to do differently so that they can continue to, be relevant? I mean, it's kind of about that.
That's why the AQ thing is so important now. Agile, adaptable, grit, resilience, persistence, curiosity, doing everything you can to build that up in yourself, and know that it's basically me Inc. We didn't used to think about it that way, but the truth of the matter, it's always been that way. You might sell your services to a company and be called an employee, but I think we're going to see more and more around the gig economy of people understanding that I am the CEO of my own company, me Inc., and I got to make sure that company is really, really good and attractive to the marketplace and constantly adding value. And I'm the one that has to build that and do it. My company might invest in me a little bit, but 90% of it is on my shoulders. And I don't know how many people are used to doing that or have enough, and you're great at this, on all of it, enough determination, enough discipline, enough grit to put their head down and say, I have to do this. No one's coming to save me. Now the other side, I think it's a great upside. It's a lot of fun. It's exciting. There's going to be lots of new opportunities for the people that will chase those opportunities and go after them.
Yep. And that's, I've been yelling this for a long time, right? It's like, get off the couch, man, and let's go get some stuff done. What are you doing today? What's the doing part of it? It's not can't wait for somebody to come pick you up, because it's just not going to happen. I think you might be disappointed. John, where can people find you? I know johnspence.com is a domain website. What other places can people find you, follow you for this knowledge?
LinkedIn. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. And then I think the best stuff would, if you go sign up for my blog and newsletter. It's interesting, Andy. I have and I think, Meet runs this. Sure. I have a newsletter, you might too, that's run by AI. And I read about an hour a day, Inc., Fortune, Forbes, Harvard Business Review, all that stuff, usually a part of a book. And when I come across something I really love, something like your videos, whatever, I pop that up there. The AI grabs it and creates every 2 weeks a newsletter that the person who reads it watches what you read, what you open, how long you read it, and it uses the AI to customize it tighter and tighter and tighter so that you get the very best articles out of the 300 I load in there personally, only the ones I love, delivers 10 or 15 that are totally focused on what you want. So I think if you go to my website and sign up for the blog/newsletter, those are two things where I was telling you, I don't put up anything unless I think it's really, really valuable. I don't want to waste people's time. So those are probably the two best places to get information from me. And it's just at johnspence.com.
All right, John, you got the domain early, so that's awesome. So johnspence.com and over on LinkedIn. And then John, we've done this for you in the past, but we're going to do it for you again. We have an affiliation with a little organization called Tiny Superheroes. And Tiny Superheroes is created by a woman in St. Louis, Missouri, named Robin. And the mission of their organization is to change the way that kids with disabilities are seen. So she's turning them from disabled kids into superheroes. And she does that by sending these little superhero capes out to them with this nice little package. And they create like superhero cards. And it's just a whole big presentation. It's really, really awesome. So we're going to sponsor some kids' capes in your name so that we can
very much
make a few kids feel like superheroes today. And man, I really appreciate you being here. I follow all your work. I watch everything you're doing, total alignment in the way that we think with everything, which has kind of been a nice thing to find somebody on the planet that thinks the way that I do sometimes, which is a little bit odd.
Could be scary.
Can be a little scary. I know that the listeners enjoyed it today. This will be in a recap to everybody that registered and everybody that attended in just a little bit. Along with a recap of the video. It'll all be on the website at petracoach.com. Please visit johnspence.com as well. Sign up for that really cool AI-generated newsletter, and continue to look for what are your skills. What are you going to need in the future so that you can be better just that 1% every day, as John said. John, thanks, brother.
Thanks, man. Take it easy.
See ya. Bye-bye.